All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Kim Lytle. I'm the director of the Office of Research in the College of Education and Human Ecology, and this is one of our workshops, and we try to make these workshops in response to questions that we get and data. We get lots of questions about that, and I think that the one thing that I do want to say is that we've got some wonderful presenters today, but there's going to be probably more questions than answers. And this is going to be the start of what we hope is a whole series, workshops, brown bags, who knows what it might be, maybe online learning opportunities that all revolve around data. And so please think about that. Be patient. Okay, this is the first one we've done in this kind of little focused effort. All right, so let's get started. Joe, do I down arrow? All right, so we have a great team of folks that are here to help the folks in EHE, the faculty, staff, research fellows, and so we've got a great team, both pre-award and post-award support folks. We do have a website, so if you're in our college, be sure that you check out our resources. We're always looking for feedback. And so here are our presenters today. So first of all, we have a faculty person from our college. His name is Arnulfo Perez, and he had an up-close and personal experience with a restricted data set. So he's going to get us started with some really great information and a positive story. Then Joe Roush, he's positive too, most of the time, and he is our EHE CIO, and of course, all colleges have one of those people running around and a whole team, and so he's kind of going to represent the college perspective. And then we have Gary Clark, who's the director of the Information Risk Management Group team in the OCIO's office at the OSU level, so we're going to get that perspective. Amanda Reinhardt is with OSU Libraries, and she's the data management librarian. There's one of them for what, 1,000 people, right? So that she's got a lot of work to do, but she's got lots of expertise. And then Laurel Dean is associate director. She is in the Office of Compliance, Export Control, and we had a discussion about whether she should have gone next to last or last. I'm hoping that it's not too confusing, but we're going to talk a lot about data, and then we're going to talk about a little bit about how you can move your data around. And so hopefully, we want great feedback, critical feedback on this workshop, and we want to know where to go next. So our objectives, and hopefully these are fulfilled. We want to talk about some policies. We want you to be able to correctly classify data. We want you to know what hosting services are out there that would make you compliant with the data that you want to collect. Know who you can share your data with and where, which is maybe we need to do more of that, and know what you should do if there's a problem, if you've lost some data or there's things that have gone sideways. And we want you to know who the people are that can help you at the college and the university level, and then training opportunities so that you can be in charge of your own learning. And so I have to start out with one bad story that I read in the news a couple days ago. Here's $3.9 million settlement, and this is the Health and Human Services actually has this group called the Office for Civil Rights, and here you have an entity. Somebody lost a laptop, and it had a whole bunch of personal data on it, and this company basically was fined $3.9 million. And so it does happen. I mean, I'm sure there's story after story that you have heard in the news and read, and so bad things can happen, but we're going to do everything that we can to help that not happen. Okay? Okay, so Arnie, you want to come up and tell us your story?
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me? All right. So my name is Arnulfo Perez. I'm faculty member in teaching and learning in STEM education. I currently have restricted data from IES, so that includes a high school longitudinal study, and I also have NAEP data. And so NAEP data includes mathematics, science, any of the subjects that they provide, economics, social studies, and whatnot. Our data is restricted in the sense that it's not accessible to the public. There's data that's for public use, and then there's data for that we have. The difference is that we have access to the actual items that the students get. Our data does not have any identifiers. We don't have any personal information from the student, the teacher, or the school. So, but we do have the items and the item numbers. So that's where the restricted data comes into play. The items get used at every cycle. Every so often they release a few items that they think it's a bad item, or they somehow decided it was not appropriate for that assessment. But they reuse them as the years go along. So then that's the whole fact that we cannot have, and not everybody can have access to that data. So my room has to be secure. It cannot be, there's very specific details on what needs to be done. It has to be a room separate from your office. It cannot be the computer that you use for your anything else. It cannot be connected to the network, which provides some issues, especially when everything's going online to update at that point. The people that work there, I'm only limited to 7 people that can work with me, and everybody has to sign an affidavit, a notarized affidavit that they can work with me. Anybody that, any more additional people, have to kick somebody out and bring somebody back in. There's just these different regulations, and so I'll tell you a little bit about how I started. And so when I started, I had to educate everybody I was meeting that this is what I need, this is how I need to do it, this is what needs to be done, and so on. And so then some people know, but then some people don't have an idea. So one of the things is they require you to have your own separate key. You cannot have a master key for the office. So then the first thing is they wanted to give me a key, thing where you put a combination, but you can't do that because somebody else can get access to that combination. So the keys are only accessible to, the people in the project, and there is one key for the fire and the police people as well. But other than that, nobody else has a key. So these were just things I had to educate people. This is what I needed, and this is what needs to be done. I've never been audited. You always hear the story about you're gonna get some price audit. An inspector gonna come in. So you try to make sure everything's in line. And so a month ago or 2 months ago, I got audited. Yeah. So I get a knock on my door, because they have all our information. So the person comes from DC. He knocks on my door, and it looks like a graduate student or somebody I haven't met, and he's just in plain clothes, and then he knocks on my door, and then he shows his card and says who he is, and I'm like, oh, and then like my heart is wrong. And then so I'm in my office, right, and then the lab is upstairs, and I'm just trying to go through my head that all the procedures and everything was done, and then we go to my office, and then we go through a series of questions, and so I go through this series of questions. And as he's looking through my office, he's making sure there's nothing that could be possible data that's somewhere in there that can be identified or anything like that. And I see him, and he's scanning the office and everything, and asking about the computers and stuff. So then we go up to the lab, and I have a graduate student that works with me, Mine Doguco, or Mine Doguco. And so she's there, and so I come in, and I say, Mine, this is an inspector, and all of a sudden her heart just dropped too, right? And so the way our lab is set up, we have a station that's for the data that's not in the network. But then we have another station completely separate that we can connect to the network, because we also need to use data that's accessible through IES, their website, and then data we cannot combine those two. So we have these two stations separate. So we go in there, and then Mine, she was amazing. He starts asking all these series of questions, and we go through the whole thing. They ask to see the data where it exists. So the funny thing about the data is that it has to be in a room that's locked, but then you get a disk, you install it in your computer, then that disk has to be locked as well, right? So then we have this I have this chain of events where I keep the keys, right? But it's like this procedure that I have to go through, and I only know how to get the keys. So I go through that, and then I get open the cabinet and get the data. And so this whole, it was intimidating at first, but then at the end, as soon as he noticed everything was in play and everything was accurately going, he went into my system. So he logged in, he waited. There's a particular time that you have to wait before the computer locks up, and then it has to give you a warning. There's a $25,000 penalty and a 5-year prison if this data gets so and so. So he went through that, and then he went through some of my files to make sure that So he did a very thorough investigation. But then once he went through that, then he was just very nice, and then so he goes, he tells me, you want to know what? So you want to know my observations? I was like, yeah. I said, well, you passed. I was like, just passed. I was like, yeah, you passed. I was like, okay. And he goes, passing's good. Passing's good. I was like, do I get a star? Do I get something? And so then he just left. He goes, I got 17 other people to see at OSU campus, and I'm only here one day. So I'll be, thank you so much. And that was it, and he was gone. But, that's the first time I've been audited. I knew it could happen. But I'd never thought, I've never heard of anybody being audited. So in a way, I was very strict on the way I did things, but then sometimes you're like, okay, you're strict, but then in the back of your head, like, should I lock it again? It's like, yes, every time, lock it, because you just never know. So that is the situation. I don't know if we have time for questions or afterwards or both. So
maybe a couple quick questions?
I have a story along
Yes.
that line I could tell you. I just heard this one yesterday. She was working in the secure data room.
Right.
And she was there all by herself, and she had a real bad nosebleed. Like, it was just spewing out. And she ran to the bathroom and left the door open. And somebody came in to do an audit right
Yes.
then.
Yes. So the door could be open, and you could be in the vicinity, and people can come into your that area with BO as long as you're there, but as long as they cannot see the computer or anything like that.
Yeah.
But if nobody's around that area, that is the.
Yeah, and they were like, why is this door open? And
Right.
she's like, I'm bleeding out my nose. I had to go to the bathroom to get tissues, and they're like, that's not a good enough excuse.
Yeah, and then one of the things, I needed to get a nameplate for the office, and they're like, well, why does it have to say restricted access? And that's kind of just say, I was like, no, it has to say this, So that was so he looked at all that material.
Well, wonderful. So Joe, you're next. You want to get started?
Yep.
Thank you so much.